We'll call to order the January 12th, 2018 Administrative Committee meeting. We'll open the meeting with asking if there are any board member concerns to be discussed at this time. Hearing none, we will move on to the approved travel. Mr. Nastri, do we have any approved travel?
There's no out-of-country travel necessary.
No travel to report. Okay. Then we will move on to the item 4. Are there any questions by any of my colleagues as it relates to the board agenda for February?
It's on the agenda on the last page because I couldn't.
And Dr. Burke, if I could just make a couple of statements with regards to the February governing board agenda. One is we'd like to add to the agenda with regards to the signature film, The Right to Breathe, amending the contract. So we want to put that on the agenda in February. And then also I just wanted to raise to the board committee's attention a couple of items. We'll have currently a few items to set hearing, but there has been and we have received correspondence regarding the credible evidence rule and circumvention. We're trying to work through these issues, but I wanted to raise to your attention that we might pull these issues. And that was it with regards to the agenda.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 6.
Item 5, Dr. Burke.
Oh, I'm sorry, item 5. Ron, I didn't mean to jump over you.
That's okay, because I think I'm also item 6. Good morning, Dr. Burke, members of the committee. I'm Ron Moskowitz, ADEO for Information Management. I'm happy to report that we're moving right along with our IT projects. We successfully went live with our new website and are receiving overwhelmingly positive feedback. We are continuously making improvements, and in about a month we'll be adding newer hardware that should speed things up. EGIS is on schedule.
It's amazing how much.
And so is e-permitting for gas stations and spray booths. The IT review is completed, and the report will be presented as the next item. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions?
I do have an issue I want to comment on.
Okay.
I looked at the new website. It's terrific.
Thank you.
I noticed that the information about, they gave you how to contact the board members, that you were using my city address, and I have an AQMD email address. There may be some others in the board lineup that have an AQMD address. It has been an issue for me and my city because if we get a public information request, there's no, I mean, my attorney doesn't have, well, the city attorney can't claim privilege for me on that email. So it has to be, only the attorneys here can claim privilege. There is a privilege, you know. So that's been the issue. So I set up a AQMD email address, and we should, anyone who has that probably should be using that AQMD email address.
Perfect. We'll make that change.
Great. But it's great. It's looking great.
Thank you.
I really like it.
It was a team effort, and my staff did a great job on that.
Yeah, they did a terrific job. It's going to be, what an improvement.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then what's the committee's pleasure on this item?
It's not an action item, is it?
No, it's not an action item, Dr. Burke.
No motion. Right. Okay. I got it. Item number 6.
Good morning. In 2016, the governing board recommended that an IT review be conducted to align our district with IT best practices. In March 2017, we selected Focal Point to conduct the review. I joined the district last August and immediately kicked off this project, which resulted in a comprehensive report that evaluated our IT systems in place and a roadmap that identified what is needed to support the district's future and for business goals and objectives. With me is Sean Thompson, the director from Focal Point, to deliver a presentation of that report. We're happy to answer any questions during and following the presentation. Sean?
Good morning, Dr. Burke and members of the committee. As Ron mentioned, I'm Sean Thompson with Focal Point, and I'm here to present the results of our review that was performed last year.
I can't hear a thing.
Speak up.
Sean,
Yeah, there you go.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now? Any better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. So in terms of the scope of the review, we evaluated the agency's current technologies and IM's capacity to support future goals and objectives. We reported the strengths, opportunities for improvement, and recommendations, and developed a prioritized recommendation roadmap to better support the organization's goals and objectives over the long term. This is intended to be a starting point to develop your own strategy and plans going forward.
Sean,
Yes.
if I could ask you to speak a little more forcefully. Thanks.
In terms of the overall approach, the framework to this review was process and practice focused, where we compared the agency's IM practices to leading industry practices across public and private sector institutions. In terms of the specific process that we performed, we conducted 50 on-site interviews in mid-October of last year. We started with about 28 end users across the organization to better understand the organization's processes and challenges. And then we subsequently continued with 22 IM subject matter experts. In terms of the review, we reviewed IM policies and processes and procedures. We reviewed system configurations and performed system observations. And we also performed some remote analysis and documentation. Our overview opinion. IM has been able to maintain baseline operations under the current budget and staffing with their strong team of dedicated professionals. When we talk about IT performance, we usually think about it in terms of crawl, walk, run. There are certain areas where the organization is crawling a little bit, some portions where the organization is walking a bit, and we want to get to that run phase over time. End users have begun to notice a positive change in the service orientation of the new ADEO leadership in a very short period of time, which is very promising. Is in critical need of infrastructure and application updates, and staffing levels will need to be evaluated and formally benchmarked going forward to make sure you have the right number of staff. The identified observations in our report are pretty common across public institutions. Now, that being said, they should not be disregarded, but it's necessary to make some updates, but you're not alone. Current applications, systems, and infrastructure will be unable to fully support the district's future goals and objectives without significant investment and support from all levels of leadership. So in terms of the top areas of strength, we'll start there. IT operations area, we noticed the workstation refresh cycle was really strong with new systems on a regular basis. The IT help desk and support function was fairly strong, provided good support. And the investment in the voice over IP system upgrades in recent years was received very successfully. In terms of cybersecurity, there were certain components to that that were fairly strong, including investment in McAfee's web protection products, physical security protections at the agency, and the stance on bring your own device where personal devices are not allowed on the internal corporate network to better secure other systems on the network. And then in terms of system development lifecycle and development operations, three key areas of strength that we noticed, including investment in web core operations, which will provide the foundation for future development of systems here at the agency. The systems development lifecycle, whereby projects require a base set of documentation, such as project definitions, business flows, and architectures. So it's important foundational documentation that's maintained. And then the public website, which was still in development during our review. It's since been released, and initial impressions are pretty positive. So we'll go into the tactical findings first. These are short-term items that are usually taken care of over a duration of 1 to 2 years. The IM governance structure is the first item. We noted during our review that there were no documented strategic plans, IT resource planning, service catalogs, or service level agreements. These items are key to defining and meeting stakeholder expectations. In addition, we noted that the ADEO oversees IT functions of a nearly 800-person agency. In our opinion, large and highly effective IT organizations in both the public and private sectors are frequently led by a dedicated CIO to align IT operations with organizational strategy, increase visibility of the IT function in the organization, provide cross-functional governance, and maximize and unlock business value through the effective use of IT. In terms of our recommendations, the first would be to develop and document governance baseline documentation and implement governance structures for IM, including an IM steering committee or council, development of long-term strategic plans, development of service catalogs and service level agreements within the organization. And then also updating the management structure. Due to IM's organizational size, wide range of technology supported, criticality of projects, we believe that direct IM representation at the executive level will be critical toward implementing the report recommendations and achieving district-wide goals and objectives. As a result, there should be some consideration to elevating the ADEO role to a DEO that reports directly to the COO. In terms of IM personnel staffing, we noted that over time, IM has inherited additional responsibilities such as audiovisual administration, which has hindered their ability to maintain current operations and execute projects in a timely manner. So additional resources are likely needed to remediate the technology deficits identified within our report and help continue with operations. So our recommendation, because this is a significant effort, is that a supplementary IM staffing benchmark study be performed to identify the exact number of staff and personnel which will be needed, because resources are expensive and you don't want to overshoot or undershoot the mark. And then in terms of email and file sharing, we noted that user inboxes had inadequate storage capacity to support efficient work processes and comply with record requests. And we also noted that no efficient solution existed to facilitate the transfer of documents between stakeholders. We believe that this is an area of a quick win for IM organization and will help increase end user satisfaction and goodwill within the organization by implementing a cloud solution such as Office 365, whereby Microsoft hosts the emails and it allows for much larger email inbox sizes. So in terms of the top 3 strategic findings, and this is something that will occur over a longer period of time, 3+ years. These are not short-term fixes here. The class desktop applications that are in use. The legacy applications currently do not support current user workflows and modern computing needs, and current applications are costly to patch and require third-party support. So our recommendation here is that there needs to be a redesign and redevelopment of class, which will leverage a core suite of web applications currently developed to build new applications that match workflows and increase user efficiency. In terms of systems infrastructure, we noted that the current supporting hardware has single points of failure, and there's an aging data center infrastructure, including a storage area network and air handlers in the data center on site, which would require significant modernization and investment upgrades over time. So in lieu of significant expenditures in this area, there should be some consideration toward a hybrid migration to the cloud, whereby there's an identification and prioritization of critical information systems to a platform as a service hosted by a third-party service provider. This will allow the organization to support the budgetary agile needs of the district and support new technologies that are currently outside of the current infrastructure. Over time, this should help increase systems availability, through built-in redundancy and smooth IT hardware costs over time instead of having peaks and valleys. In addition, it could help support increased IT security. And then the last item here, and the strategic findings over long-term policies and procedures, we noted that there was an incomplete set of IT policies in place, which can lead to issues with consistency and security over time, and insufficient documented procedures that can lead to single points of failure and inadequate knowledge transfer within critical business processes and functions as you have transitions within the organization. So our recommendation is that there needs to be a development and augmentation where policies do exist, documentation and distribution of formal policies and procedures that align with the current processes and strong practices, such as those found in the IT infrastructure library, which is IT process framework. So in terms of the recommendation roadmap, this is going to take time, personnel, and capital. There are many long-term projects that we've identified. These are commonly grouped into phases by organizations such as long-term, midterm, short-term, midterm, and long-term based on priority to the organization and the ability to meet the goals and objectives of the organization. Many of these projects may take 3 to 5+ years to complete. This is not something that can generally be fixed in 1 year. Additional personnel will likely be needed, as I mentioned earlier, to complete the roadmap, and this is why a benchmarking and data analysis of staffing is going to be critical to make sure you have the right number of personnel to support the organization. And then in terms of capital, the organizational budget should be allocated to support the overall recommendation roadmap and timeline. And this obviously will require top-down leadership. And then we have the usual time horizon in graphic form. In terms of the overall recommendations, there are a significant number here. Some will take more effort than others. We just wanted to indicate that, yes, there are a lot of things that really need to be performed to better support the organization over time. So with that, if there are any questions?
Those are good. This is a serious chart here.
Any questions by our colleagues?
I have one question.
Dr. Parker?
What do you think that is going to take in reference to dollars and people in order to implement the very first, at least the first phase of your recommendation?
So we did provide a detailed total cost of ownership where costs are known within the report. The first phases is really going to depend on kind of internal decision. You can take our recommendation on some of these. You may disregard some of them in terms of priority, but the overall cost over the next several years, this will likely be a multi-million-dollar endeavor.
If I can make a comment, maybe not. So, looking down at this, this is a bit overwhelming. I thought we were a little bit further ahead, but at the same time, there's a lot in here that I think is pretty much a daylight for a lot of us. So, looking at the email solution that we're currently, with email servers that I've heard from staff might only have 500 to maybe a full gigabyte, 500 megabytes to full gigabyte. In a modern day setting, that's very, very weak. That's just one item in a long list of things here we're going to have to fix. When I talk with staff and hear about, I mentioned things like getting GIS online and other things, I now understand a little bit more why I get sort of a look of, well, I wish we could get there, because the foundation is so weak. We've got a lot of work to do. I do completely agree with the recommendations as far as moving as much stuff as we can out into the cloud to, take that load off of our internal network and take that load off of our internal support. I think a lot of these recommendations are spot on, and I really appreciate the work done by the outside company. I think we really need to take this seriously. And this is the future of this organization, is going to be the data management of all this data. I was talking to a gentleman out in Palm Springs yesterday at a event, one of our employees, and asking him about the new sensors that are going out. And these are the next step above the purple air sensors. But there's still no way to get that data out of our network onto a website where people can see it. So we're still gathering a lot of data where maybe it's somewhere buried on the site, but there's no GIS ability. There's no look on a map and see it, which is what we've got to get it down to. So our school kids and our families and our neighbors can find this data and know what's going on in their area. So I take this very seriously, and I think we need to make some serious momentum shifts to get this done. I recognize there's a huge cost factor. So those are just my comments, and thank you, Chair, for looking into this and going down this path.
Well, Mayor Benoit has been a blessing to this board in his field of expertise. I was out there on this limb a long time by myself until Ben came along, and he'll never know how much I appreciate him. But I also appreciate the work that you're doing, and there's no question there's been movement. And there's no question that what Ben said is absolutely correct. This is the future. And there is going to be substantial costs to this, and we have to be prepared to meet those costs, because in the age that we're living now, this information dissemination is extraordinarily important. So I'm really pleased that we're moving forward at an expeditious pace. Any other comments by any? Yes, Judy?
I want to ask focal point. Since there's so much laid out here that needs to be done,
Yes.
how would you prioritize? What should come first? And how are we going to attack this?
Sure. So within our report, we developed our own prioritized approach, where we take the items on the recommendation list, which I'm not sure if I can go back to it, the large number of items that we have here. Yeah, and then we prioritize in terms of phases, right? So we have the first items that we think should be performed, second items, and then third items. And that's really intended to be the foundation for the strategic planning that Lon and his team will be doing and providing in terms of investment into the future. So that's, I don't think anything to add further to that.
No, it's a very comprehensive report, and they did identify a number of items that have a high, medium, and low priorities on them. And so we're taking it internally and determining what the resources will be necessary and what the priorities are to the district.
And so you would phase it, by time. In year one, we do this, and this is the budget we need for that.
Correct.
Year two, et cetera, we need that. One of the recommendations is to create a CIO position. I want you to, how important is that? And I know most public companies do have CIO,
Right.
but it's less common in a governmental organization, right?
It really depends. From our experience, it's more of a 70-30 split, where we do see it pretty commonly these days. So I do think it's pretty important to elevate that position to other DEO level positions, have run as a peer reporting up to the CIO. So I do think that's a critical stage into the remediation of these issues that were identified.
The other thing.
Can I ask a clarifying question on that?
Yeah.
When you say 70-30 split, and I apologize for jumping in, but the 70-30 split, for organizations our size, it's 70-30 split, or for organizations our size, is it a little bit more common?
So organizations of your size and larger, we tend to see more the CIO representation within organizations. So instead of having the equivalent of a director of IT, there is more of that executive level representation of IT at the executive level.
Okay. And one more thing was that I thought somewhere in here you mentioned having some kind of a IT committee. And when you said that, I thought, yeah, because there's so many departments here in our organization that you might need to have some level where everybody comes together and talks about what's happening, like the permitting function,
Right.
The PR function, or public outreach function. I think that is a good idea, where all levels can kind of come together and talk about what's happening within the whole organization, so that there's some big tent that looks over what's happening. I'm I'm just gonna make that comment. I think that's a very positive way to address some of the issues.
If I could interject on this. So,
You may be saying something.
sorry, Dr. Burke. So on this particular issue, I'm going
And
to ask
I've
you.
asked them to get a microphone that's closer to you so we can hear you here.
Is this any better, Dr. Burke?
Judy's got to talk. Because we're having a hard time hearing her talk.
Well, you were having a hard time hearing me. Well, I mentioned
That's
that.
perfect.
I mentioned
That's
that.
perfect.
Okay. Now, what I mentioned that you may not have heard was that in the report, they recommended having some kind of overarching committee that would be handling IT for the whole organization, because we have a lot of different departments that feed in to the IT, the whole IM, the whole information management program, and that would include our permitting, our PR people, the public outreach, and a number of other groups as well. So it would just be good to have sort of a common clearinghouse where all that can be discussed. So I think our CEO has some comments to make as well, so go ahead.
Thank you, Council Member. So a lot of these issues, I would say, are issues that we were aware of. In fact, I would ask, what here is really new in terms of something that we hadn't been considered, something that we hadn't been addressing. So I think what we've had is the ability to document well and have an opportunity to report back to the board from an outside organization about the things that Ron was actually brought in to address. I want to add that Ron is currently part of the Executive Council. Ron has that executive access, and Ron has done a tremendous job of integrating, of communicating, and pulling together many disparate elements that before were not coordinated. So a lot of the recommendations that have been made, I believe we're already implementing. A lot of the things that we're doing in terms of developing immediate terms of tactical short-term goals as well as long-term goals, one of the things that we as an organization are doing are operational plans. Each division is preparing a plan that describes what are their requirements, what are the things that they're working on, how are they going to coordinate with the other groups. And in fact, within the next 2 weeks, each of the divisions at an executive retreat will be presenting those to all of us so that collectively we as an organization are better organized and prepared to address to those. We also talked about the issue of how do we better integrate the infrastructure, if you will, of the organization. And we actually do have a committee that consists of planning and rules, of technology, of communications, media, public and affairs, legal, where we do have that cross change. We need to do better on that. And I can actually cite Dr. Burke, how we were following up on some of the wildfire issues, and we were talking about communication and distribution, and we didn't have IT present, and that was a mistake. And so we're constantly trying to improve these mechanisms. I think, again, I just want to stress that a lot of these recommendations we're already moving forward on, and that some of these things we believe we've already addressed in terms of IT's access, its position, and its stature. And with Mike O'Kelly's recent departure, Ron reports directly to the COO. So we believe that we're certainly meeting in spirit. We're certainly doing a lot of these things. And I just want to make clear that a lot of these things that have been identified are not new to us, but they are things that we are moving aggressively on, and we're trying to put it in a format in a way that will allow you to make some decisions with regards to the investment and create expectations with regards to the timing of the investment returns in terms of actionable items that we have for the district, for the communities we serve, and for the board.
Good. That's excellent. That's what we're looking for. That's exactly what we're looking for. Any other comments by any other board members? Okay. I think that will move us to item number 7.
Dr. Berg, members of the board, good morning. Under AB 1318, the project at Coachella Valley, we wanted to give you an update about the projects that are conducted. Originally, the board awarded about $51 million of projects for a total of 26 projects to be done in Coachella Valley. As of today, 25 of those projects are complete, and I was to give you an update regarding where we are. Some of the projects, especially the big solar ones, we are at the end of it. We are about to have the interconnection with Southern California Edison, but our work has been completed. There was also one large project, the CV Link project with CVAG, and Mr. Tom Kirk from CVAG is present here right now. What we will do is Mr. Tom Kirk will give an update about the progress of the CV Link project, and due to the congestion of the agenda, if the board members would like, I can give update on the remaining 25 projects at the end of this meeting. Otherwise, I can do that at the next meeting.
Thank you for having me. Again, Tom Kirk with CVAG. Dr. Burke, great to see you and the other members of the administrative committee again. From the Coachella Valley, I think most of you know, you manage part of our air basin as well. And we have a decades-long partnership with you on regulatory efforts. Dr. Fine, thank you for your efforts, street sweeping and the rest of it. CV Link. What we'll do is queue up a little presentation. My apologies to you, Dr. Burke, and others who know very much about this project. I assumed a few people in the audience didn't, so I've got a few introductory slides, and what I can tell you is that this project, which is probably the largest active transportation project in the state, if not the nation, would not have been a reality had not the leadership of South Coast been there, and particularly the chairman and his close association with our good friend, the late Supervisor Benoit. So with that, let me give you a brief update. Background, design status, and next steps. Background, Coachella Valley. I like to point this out to our friends in the Coachella Valley. This is how we used to see ourselves. This is how we are today. And I point that out because when I got to the Coachella Valley, I was told the most congested time of the year was right now, during the golf tournaments. You probably couldn't even name a golf tournament in the Coachella Valley today, yet you do know about Coachella and Stagecoach, and the world is changing just as fast in the Coachella Valley as it is in the rest of your basin, or the district. So, we embrace this project that, again, may be the largest in the nation. It is a project that connects Palm Springs to Coachella along the Whitewater River. Many of you know of projects like this along the Santa Ana River and other places where you use levees to connect communities together via an active transportation link. And for years, people have talked about it in the Coachella Valley, and what we thought, with the leadership, again, of your chairman and Supervisor Benoit and others, thought, well, what if we do something more than a typical bike trail? What if we allow golf carts? Shocker, we have a lot of them in the Coachella Valley. We actually have more and more of these as well, neighborhood electric vehicles. And we decided to supersize a little bit our bike trail and make it something more, a new transportation corridor that can accommodate neighborhood electric vehicles and bikers with a separate path for walkers. And we do a little bit of this in the Coachella Valley now on streets. And we hired the best and brightest nationally to design something for us, and we said, that isn't it. We're not building a bike trail. We are building a new transportation corridor for the Coachella Valley and a demonstration project for this region and hopefully the nation. These are some of the images of what we plan on building, and I'll show you in a second what we already have built.
Difference between the quality.
Hopefully, sure.
I'm not commenting on your picture.
We lost you, Dr. Burke.
Sure.
There we go.
Say it again, please.
Dr. Burke?
Huh? Yes.
We lost you for a second.
Oh, I just didn't want him to think I was interrupting him. I was just talking to someone here about the quality of our pictures as compared to the quality of your pictures there in CCA.
All right, fair enough. Moving on.
Please continue.
I'm just giving you a bit of a status on the project, which is my primary mission here today. And on that status, we have completed our environmental impact report, and the district staff are well aware of what it takes to get an EIR done in the state of California these days, particularly on a big project. Don't start me on that process. So these volumes and volumes of material were done. We had a fair amount of testimony. Our EIR was heard in May of 2017. Again, a full house of testimony, and we were certified the EIR. The project has been approved. We had 58 speakers. Most of them, believe it or not, were in support. It's nice having a big project where most people show up to support you rather than the reverse. And amazingly, Barbara Baird, amazingly, no sequel lawsuit. No sequel lawsuit, and had I bet on that outcome, I would have lost the bet. Because the project, while wildly supported in the Coachella Valley, does have its opponents. And we'll talk about that in a second. The approved project isn't exactly the vision that Supervisor Benoit and I and the chairman talked about 4 years ago, but close. We're connecting Palm Springs to Coachella with a couple of gaps. And I'm sure that Air District's not familiar with the concept of NIMBYism, but we do have a couple of communities, Rancho Mirage and Indian Wells, who chose not to move forward with our project, so we chose not to build in their communities at this time. Oh, and so I mentioned no sequel lawsuit. The irony, and Barbara and I shared some emails earlier this week, the irony is that your legal counsel and mine would have been in a courtroom today in Palm Springs on, and not a sequel lawsuit, but a lawsuit challenging the district for contracting with CVAG on the project, and RCTC, Riverside County Transportation Commission, with agreeing with some of the funding on the project, and CVAG, the three co-defendants, have been sued over the funding of the project. A lawsuit was filed a couple of months ago, and I wouldn't use the words frivolous and politically motivated, and I never said that. I never tweeted it. But we believe that it is frivolous and politically motivated, and the lawsuit has been continued until March. And we're working very closely and cooperatively together on it. So what happens at those gaps? Well, what happens is bike riders and others will get off the CV link and take their chances on Highway 111 and other streets, but we'll try to encourage them to do so as safely as possible. Funding for the project. These numbers will seem small in light of your budget and endeavors, but you probably know there are probably not very many $100 million bike projects in this nation. This is a $100 million bike project that started in many ways with seed funding by SCAQMD of $17.5 million. CVAG is in. We function essentially as a transportation authority for the Coachella Valley. We've committed 20. We have funding from the Desert Healthcare District, $10 million. No other healthcare district in the nation, as far as I know, is funding a piece of infrastructure like this. We also have CMAQ dollars, federal dollars, some other state and federal funding, and we are up to $85 million of funding. The next $5 million will come from the California Transportation Commission, we believe, at the end of this month. So we've got plenty of funding to get the project started, and we have. Pursuant to our contract with South Coast, we built our first demonstration phase of the project, and it connects largely, it's next to a low-income community in Cathedral City and connects close to the Palm Springs Airport. You see the airport on the left. This is a 2.5-mile long project between Ramon Road and Vista Chino. And that's an area Mayor Benoit and others know about if you know the Coachella Valley. And here we go, showing the project under construction. And of course, we are trying to make it just like we envisioned. The flat work is done. The project is 90% complete and very consistent with our original schedule with South Coast. And we are planning a grand opening and ribbon cutting event come the end of February. And of course, at that event, we will be honoring Supervisor Benoit, Chairman Burke. We will be working very closely with you and Mayor Benoit and his family, of course, on the exact date and time of that event. And we welcome a very large contingent from South Coast to acknowledge, again, perhaps the largest and most ambitious project of its kind in the nation. So where are we? Our next segments, we'll be looking for our next construction segments. We do have a NEPA process, or a federal environmental process, that's underway that'll be complete, we believe, by the end of this month. We're working with the tribes as well. Caltrans is CVAG's lead agency, and we have a long relationship with them on building other projects in the Coachella Valley. We are acquiring right-of-way as we speak, and we plan on constructing the rest of the project over the next 3 and 4 and 5 years. Acquiring right-of-way is our biggest time constraint. Building the project is secondary, and we expect the entire project to be built within the next 5 years. With that, there's more information there. And again, I can't, you could turn that off, please. And Chairman and members of the Administrative Committee, I can't thank enough the Air District's leadership on this. This project would not have occurred if not for the district's funding and political and other sorts of support and commitment. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. You said you were going to honor former Supervisor John Benoit. I assume, I should not assume, I'd like to know, is there some permanent recognition to him in that project?
There will be, Chairman Burke, and the anything the chairman would want me to do, I would do to honor the supervisor. But I'll tell you what, there's one person more important than the chairman, and that's Cheryl Benoit. So we've been working very closely with Cheryl Benoit on what is appropriate and how she wants to properly acknowledge her late husband's work on this project. And I know Ben's kind of shaking his head because Cheryl's been through a lot this year, and we're going to support her in every way we can.
Well, let me say this from my perspective. I am extraordinarily concerned that the supervisor have some kind of permanent recognition for his work in that project. And so I know Cheryl is in charge. I'm just her. I'm a warrior in her army, but as chief bottle washer in her army, I just want to make sure that the guy who called me at 11 o'clock at night to make sure that we were going to do this is properly acknowledged and it's permanent. It's nice to talk about him the day of the opening, and I'm all for that. But I'd like to know who at our agency should be talking to your people about that.
We've been in discussion, and I'll take a call from anybody in your organization to talk about the details of.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask Wayne to make sure that he stays in touch with you, and I'm going to urge my wife, who sits on that last $5 million commission up there, the next 5, to make sure that she brings it up at the California Transportation Commission. So, because, like you said, this wouldn't exist without John. So John, this needs to have recognition for his unbelievable effort in this. Yeah.
Let me assure you that we will permanently recognize the supervisor, and there's no dispute from this seat about the importance of doing so.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I'm happy to see that it's coming. It looks like it's going to be beautiful, and you got a wonderful project.
Thank you.
I'm going to try and send some of the bike riders off my street down to Coachella Valley, so they get a good ride with them. Are there any?
Thanks.
Is there any other committee member who needs to hear the status of those other projects? I think that we can take a written report on that, and if you could send that to the board members, I would appreciate it, Fred.
Yes, I will do that, sir.
Okay. Item number 8. Do we have any board member assistance this month?
Yes.
Yes, we do, Dr. Burke.
Whose board assistant do we have?
Supervisor Solis, her board assistant.
Oh, that's right. Okay. I'll accept a motion to approve her board member assistance.
I'll
Move the item.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Would the clerk call the roll?
Mayor Benoit,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell,
Aye.
Dr. Parker,
Aye.
Dr. Burke.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Good morning, Dr. Burke, members of the committee. I have the next 3 items, which are standard requests for IT operations. The first item, we established a list from an RFQ of pre-qualified vendors to provide smaller technologies needed to support the day-to-day district needs, such as printers, laptops, hardware, software, and audiovisual equipment. As a result, we identified 12 vendors to provide these products over a 2-year period. This action is to approve these 12 vendors. These funds are already included in our budget. I'm happy to answer any questions on this item and then move on to the next item.
Any questions by any of the committee members?
I think this is
Ben?
Nope, sorry, side conversation here.
Oh, okay.
I'll
I
move the
thought you were
item
giving me
too.
the finger.
No, sorry, I was pointing at a podium here, trying to figure out a network connection. We've been having some issues with the video system here. We're finally getting them worked out.
Okay, we'll send over our new guy.
Second.
We have a
He's
motion
doing
and a
good.
second. Would the clerk call the roll?
Mayor Benoit,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell,
Aye.
Dr. Parker,
Aye.
Dr. Burke.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, number 10, Ron?
Good morning. This second item is an action to execute a contract with Digital Networks Group Incorporated to upgrade the fiber network in our building. The current fiber is over 20 years old and needs to be replaced. We conducted a competitively bid process via an RFP, and the funds are in this project the funds for this project are included in our budget. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions by any of my colleagues? I'll accept a motion.
Move approval?
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Would the clerk call the roll?
Mayor Benoit,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell,
Aye.
Dr. Parker?
Aye.
Dr. Burke?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay. Item number 11.
This last item is to authorize purchase of a server and storage maintenance contract from Hewlett Packard Company for 1 year. This is an annual request, and the funds for this project are included in our budget, and I'm happy to answer any questions on the budget.
I'll move approval.
May we get a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Would the clerk call the roll?
Mayor Benoit?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell?
Aye.
Dr. Parker?
Aye.
Dr. Burke?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, Mr. Lowe, item number 12.
Hi, Dr. Burke. It's Matt here, substituting for Jason. This next item is to recognize funding from the US EPA under the Section 105 grant program. It's also to reallocate some funding, but both of those actions are essentially to enhance our ozone monitoring network. So we're asking your approval to recognize those funds and then issue some RFQs and purchase equipment. Be happy to answer any questions.
Move the item.
Second.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Would the clerk call the roll?
Mayor Benoit?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell?
Aye.
Dr. Parker?
Aye.
Dr. Burke?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, item 13, Mr. Alatorre.
Good morning, Dr. Burke and committee members. This item is to seek approval to conduct 2 conferences for seniors in 2018. It is anticipated that these 2 conferences will cost up to $225,000. We anticipate getting sponsors for this to help defray the costs coming out of the district. These 2 conferences will build upon past conferences we had in 2011 and again in 2012. We anticipate having 2 conferences, one in LA and Los Angeles and the other one in the Inland Empire or Orange County. The Los Angeles Senior Conference, the last time we had 3,000 attendees. It was very successful. As you're aware, I'm aware, seniors are very influential in with their peers and especially with their families, because I know my mom always calls me up and tells me about the list she saw on TV, and she wants me to change my bad habits, but she's kind of successful at times. But this is a great opportunity for the district to educate seniors and hopefully influence their families and peers. Seek approval.
I know the last time we did this, it was just amazing. It was just amazing. We did it at the convention center. I think we had between 2,000 and 3,000 seniors show up, and they were into air quality that day. There was no question about it. It was fantastic. I'm glad to see we're doing this again, and I would urge you to think about doing something for the kids too. It's been a few years since we've had one of the student conferences like we used to have downtown. I think we had 5,000 kids down there.
Actually, it was about 8,000. It's 8,000.
8,000. So, I got to commend you, Mr. Alatorre. This kind of outreach is really commendable from my perspective. So I will start a motion on this item.
I'll move the item.
Approval.
Second.
Do we have a motion and a second? Would the clerk call the roll?
Mayor Benoit?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell?
Aye.
Dr. Parker?
Aye.
Dr. Burke?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
So item 14 is just the matter of presenting reports to the committee. Is there any other business to be brought before the committee this morning? Hearing none, Is there any public comment in CC8?
None here. None here.
How about at your location?
None here.
None here? Okay. Well, with that, we will adjourn the administrative committee meeting until February 9th, 2018 at 10 a.m.